Hello, I'm Don J. Grundeman. I'm a doctor of chiropractic in California, and I want to have a small discussion with you on race. It's extremely important in the sense that we've had so many racial incidences in our nation lately and the polarization of the populace. And in this race discussion, I'm going to give you information on the basis of the race difficulties we have in our nation, why that's occurred. And so I want to start out that the foundation of racism in the country, we have to really understand it. We have to know history, a history which you won't learn in your public schools, you won't hear in the media, you won't hear on television, but you can back this up, what I'm about to tell you. There's a website called blackgenocide.org which discusses a great deal of this. And in a nutshell, we have to look back to one of the racism has been flowing through history. There's always been a superior and inferior people's consideration, which has generated wars and attacks on other people, be it via nations or be it individual persons by racism. But when we look at racism as an institution, and I present to you that America, the United States of America, is an extremely racist country for reasons I'm about to explain. And it starts generally with Charles Darwin. That is a seminal event in the history of racism. And racism via Charles Darwin comes from his main book. And most people consider that the main book which Charles Darwin wrote is called The Origin of Species. That is not correct. The full name of Charles Darwin's main book is On the Origin of Species and the Preservation of Favored Races. Charles Darwin's book was actually a crystallization of the political and social movements of his time, mainly Caucasians in England, who considered themselves superior and they considered other people inferior, mainly all non-whites and also many Caucasians, such as the Irish at that time. And so Charles Darwin's book was taking those racist views and actually making them into so-called science via survival of the fittest and other philosophies which he presented in this book. So it was mainly, it's presented as science which became out into the public, but it was mainly a political view which was covered up by a scientific pretext. And so in that sense, Charles Darwin, with his preservation of favored races and also survival of the fittest, presented the view of the Caucasians that they were superior and their inferiors had to be held in check. And if you look back in history also, there's a gentleman, Parson Malthus, M-A-L-T-H-U-S, and he wrote a book about rabbits. And the idea that is relevant to humans and racism is that his presentation was that rabbits would, via breeding, they would overrun their food supply, and then they would die. So their food supply would go up, and then they would run out of food because they were multiplying too fast, and then they would die. So that's very important for racism, because the idea of what I'll call the superiors of Charles Darwin's time, who took his philosophies and created a movement, actually a political movement called social Darwinism, to take his philosophies and put them into social and cultural manifestation. And so their idea was that if you have people like rabbits who can't think, these are the inferiors, while they, the superiors, can think. The superiors had a duty to protect the human race and protect their gene pool. And so to protect themselves from being overrun by the multiplication of the rabbits/humans. And so therefore they had to deal with that problem. It's also known in one phrase as the white man's burden of what happened at that time. And so racism, institutionalized racism via Charles Darwin's perspective of survival of the fittest, it manifested in many different ways. Primarily it became what we know as eugenics or race science. And that was the scientific study of how the superiors were indeed superior to their inferiors. And race science from the time of Darwin was very popular. It gained in popularity as the years passed. But also the war against non-whites via this racism manifestation had many different manifestations in our country. And that was, for say, the Ku Klux Klan was one manifestation. If we go back in history, the Klan started during the Civil War, the late Civil War Reconstruction, and it was attacking blacks at that time based on the race idea of superior and inferior. And the Klan ebbed and flowed through the late 1800s, and then it gained greater popularity in the early 1900s. If you check your history, you'll find that there was a movie called Birth of a Nation. And that was a major blockbuster movie at that time during the presidency of Woodrow Wilson. And actually, that movie was shown at the White House. And it was heavily endorsed by Wilson and his entire cabinet. And its genesis, its general story was the actually glory of the Ku Klux Klan, that it was saving the nation at that time. So in that manifestation of the Klan, it gained power through political movement expressed of Darwin's theories. But there's also, like as I mentioned, eugenics, race science. And that was very important also in Wilson's time, in that the superiors had to defeat the inferiors and keep them in check. And one way they did this through race science was a lady named Margaret Sanger. She was the founder of what was called Planned Parenthood. And Planned Parenthood is actually, I present to you, the most vicious racist organization in the history of the world, indeed. Because the founder of Planned Parenthood, Margaret Sanger, cloaked her racism in the idea of helping women via abortion. But the whole idea of abortion has always been not to help women, but to keep inferior races, the genetically inferior, in check. And that's by Margaret Sanger's own words in her own great book, The Pivot of Civilization, where she, in her own words, not mine, but her words, called blacks as human weeds. And so her book was completely and totally racist, far more than any so-called racist commentary we have now. But that is blacked out of your history books. You will not hear it. And the reason for that is that the superior rich classes at Darwin's time continued on because they had the money, the power, the means to put their racist social Darwinism doctrines into effect. And that's why you had laws against blacks and whites marrying. It had developed throughout the United States. Where did those laws come from? They came from the social Darwinist movement to take Darwin's theories and put them into practical usage to stop the inferiors from multiplying like rabbits. So you had a broad range of these racist expressions throughout society. But also, you had the social Darwinism of Planned Parenthood, which from its beginning has been dedicated to the eradication of the black population, the enslavement, I'll call them, of the black population. And that's because Margaret Sanger recognized in her own writings that it was bad image for her and Planned Parenthood if they were discovered. If a black person discovered them as racism and went up and said, hey, these people are killing us. We've got to stop this. Look at what they're doing. And so they developed a solution to the problem. And they called it, in her writing again, not mine, it's called the Negro Project. And the Negro Project was that if any black citizen came up and said, hey, look guys, what they're doing to our community, we've got to stop them. The Negro Project said that, in fact, in her own words, we don't want the word to get out that we want to exterminate the black race, the Negro race. And that was her words, not mine. And so this was developed that if a black person got so-called uppity and was challenging these racists who were attacking the community, the black community you would go in, these social Darwinists would go and they would literally buy out, preferentially pastors, in their work, who would then go to the uppity person who was about to challenge them and say, hey buddy, you got it all wrong. They're really our friends. You just have to look at it differently. And so the whole basis of the program was to get key leaders in the black community and compromise them to support the social Darwinists in their attack against the black community, so that the black community would be backstabbed by these people. They didn't know that these well-meaning, supposedly well-meaning community members were actually on the side of their enemy who wanted to eliminate the community. I've been told by a friend of mine that in the slave population during the Civil War, the people who were interacting between the master of the house and the slaves in the field were called house Negroes. And the house Negroes were the people who kept the slaves in line. Again, the term uppity. And so what happened was that the power of the social Darwinists took these uppity blacks and kept them in their place by house Negroes. Another term is also called Uncle Tom. And so I presented to you that my black friends that I'm speaking to right now, that one of the great difficulties for your community is that you have been betrayed, not simply by the so-called white racists of social Darwinism, who are still going. They never changed their perspective, they just kept going because it looks bad now. It looks bad after World War II. Their racism was what caused these boxcars development in Nazi Germany, why people were boxcarred up. But that looks bad for image in our time. And so now that image has been changed. And now the Planned Parenthood, which has literally killed more blacks than the Ku Klux Klan could ever dream of, they now have shifted their image and now they are a health clinic. They have morphed in with advertising, and social Darwinism has shifted into a health clinic as a cover. And so now they have a respectable front which they operate behind. And also one of the difficulties, my black friends, is that the social Darwinists have developed the Negro Project to such a degree that you have a fantastic percentage of your community which is compromised. And let's start at the top. President Barack Obama is like that with the social Darwinists of our nation. The people who continued on after Margaret Sanger, who morphed into Planned Parenthood because it became a more socially acceptable name for their racism. So let's say that the Ku Klux Klan killed 1,000 people. And let's, for our example, let's say they killed 10 times that many, 10,000 people. And then let's say that they even killed 100,000 people by lynching. So 10 times, let's say they killed a fantastic amount of people. So you have the Klan with 100,000 people killed. Even with 100,000 people killed, my friends, Planned Parenthood has killed far more blacks than the Ku Klux Klan could ever imagine could be killed. The Klan is like a big joke because they are out and everyone can say, oh, look at those racists, and some of them are stupid enough to be racist. But the idea that I'm presenting to you is that your biggest enemy is cloaked behind the power of government. Your biggest enemy is in the phone book. Look under abortion, you'll see Planned Parenthood. And you'll see the politicians lining up to support Planned Parenthood and their supposed health clinic and hiding behind women's rights. And the simple fact is that you, my black friends, are the targets. And think of it again. If you have a group that's going out and hanging black people, how obvious is that? You're right out in the open, and people can be dumb enough to, if you're a Klan member, they can say, look, you're stupid, you're killing black people. But if you're a health organization and you don't want to be considered racist, then you can kill everybody. You can kill blacks and whites, and then if I come up and say you're attacking the black community, as you have stated you want to in your own writings, you can say, oh, what are you talking about? We kill everybody. We're equal opportunity. And so therefore, you have people sacrificed, and the Caucasians who are sacrificed are known as, another term, white trash, from the view of the social Darwinists who control everything. This is an upper layer of government that I'm speaking to you about. You see the representatives like President Obama, who is an Uncle Tom himself, the chief Uncle Tom of the nation. And you've got Uncle Toms and Aunt Toms running around all over the place. Maxine Waters, Barbara Lee, a congressman in my neighborhood, Sheila Jackson Lee. Show me a black person who supports Planned Parenthood, and I'll show you an Uncle Tom or an Aunt Tom. Now, they may be ignorant. They may not know the history of Planned Parenthood. But in general, they do know, and they don't care because they know where they, to use the term, where their bread is buttered on. They know if they cross their masters, I'm talking about the plantation masters of the nation who control everything behind the scenes. And they have their lackeys, their house Negroes, who carry on to attack you, the black community, every day. And let's take this down to a cultural and social level. In my area in Oakland, there was a black lady shot just a few days ago. And within the last 3 weeks, there were 2 other black gentlemen shot, at least that number. There are blacks being shot all the time by people in the black community. Where is the outrage on that? If you see the so-called racism where you have a thing called Black Lives Matter, where do you see black people saying, having marches for this lady, this mother of 3 who was killed? Or the other 2 young gentlemen who were killed? You don't see it at all. And why? Because those Black Lives Matter campaign don't give a damn about you. It's not about pro-black, it's about anti-police. And so these people who portray themselves as your defenders, like Barbara Lee and such, they're only there as parasites on your community. They're parasites sucking your blood, and if they will support your main enemies, Planned Parenthood, who are busy killing you and happy to do that. So what I'm speaking of is that you have greater problems than any so-called racism in the police, which if it is there, and it probably is, it can't hold a candle to the racism which I'm talking about. These are ants that in the police campaign, police racism, compared to the elephant that I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is something which has permeated our society. It's like a heavy fog of racism on our society. Every day you exist in it. And your community has been crushed because they've reached inside your skull and they've taken the value of human life and they're crushing it. And that's their intent, to crush you, because they look at you shooting the hell out of each other and they say, oh, that's just the way they are. That's the way I'm speaking of the plantation masters, how they view the black community. And so are they going to lift a finger to stop that? No, they aren't, because they want to crush you in so many different ways. Culturally, such as these Black Lives Matter fake campaigns which don't give a damn about you. And another thing, to take it another aspect, even in television shows, this permeates through the entertainment media and permeates through our culture. The show Empire, which is considered a so-called hit show now. Why is that on? Well, of course it can gain success, but there's a reason that it's been funded. And the reason is, if you go back to the commentaries of one of the producers, I believe the main producers, is to teach you, in his own words, not mine, in his own words, one of the main things they're trying to teach you is that you look at homosexuality differently. Homosexuality, which is now being indoctrinated into our entire community through what's called social engineering. You, my black friends, are being socially engineered to, just as you've been accepting abortion, which destroys your community. It's killed millions and millions of blacks. Again, blackgenocide.org. Prove me wrong. Go there and see the horrific tale of how you've been destroyed. But the whole idea is to reach inside and break your religious foundations, to break the Christian foundations which are in your skull. And the end result is you're going to be slaves just as much as if you were working on the plantations in chains, and far more, because you won't have external chains. Your internal chains on your mind and soul are being forged right now by the group that I'm speaking of. And they are chaining you every day by training you, and their idea was social engineering to crush yourself. You aren't going to be chained by somebody who's going to be in a chain gang. You'll walk your way into the abortion clinic and kill your own children, which is what our society is being trained to do, to kill themselves. So my black friends, I'm just saying to you that the racism, yes, we are a fantastically racist country, but it's far different from what you've been indoctrinated into. Yes, you can have bad police, but what I'm speaking of is far, far greater than what you're talking about, and it won't be challenged. The people who have these remarks about Black Lives Matter, they won't touch what I'm talking about. Nobody will tell you this, because if they do, they're gone tomorrow. They lose their job, they're fired, whatever. If they say this on a newscast, they'll be gone tomorrow. They're history, because the power that I'm talking about has enough power to crush them, just as it's going to crush you, unless you finally wake up, my friends. Please wake up. And it's a difficult battle. It's going to be fantastically difficult. But you have to see the reality behind the people who are betraying you. Our president is betraying you. He is like this with the people who have dedicated themselves to kill you, no matter how nice and three-piece suits themselves they are. They're dedicated to your eradication, and they get the bones. They're Uncle Toms and Aunt Toms. They're going to get all they need if they sell you out. And if they don't sell you out, they're out of there. Their careers are gone. So my friends, I just leave this message with you that yes, we are a nation of racism, but it's far different from what you've been told that it is. And it's going to be a long and extremely difficult battle for you to survive in your community. They've already killed millions of you. They've got you trained to kill yourself. They've got you trained to shoot the hell out of yourself. They've got all that set. Public schools are not your friends at all, because they're dedicated to socially engineering you, and they're not dedicated to your education. They're dedicated to something far, far different, but you don't realize that, because in your view, they're lab rats. In their view, you're lab rats. And so as a lab rat, you don't recognize that you're in the maze and you're being trained to go after the cheese that they put out for you. So my friends, may God bless you that you do survive. May your families prosper, and may the entire black community prosper as it can. But in order to do that, you have to literally save your soul. Because the objective of these plantation masters, who are totally anti-Christian, they despise Christianity, is to reach inside your soul, or inside your mind, inside your spirit, and crush you by replacing your religious beliefs of God and the value of Jesus Christ and Christianity with their anti-religion, their humanistic religion, their atheistic religion. They're out to crush your soul, literally. And so I ask God's blessings upon you in your battle to survive, and you and your family, but it's a very difficult battle that you'll have. And so please contact me. If you have any questions, challenge me. I'm at stopthehirs@hotmail.com. I'm a doctor of chiropractic in San Leandro, California. Please show me where I'm wrong. You won't be able to, because everything that I've mentioned to you can be documented. And it's, again, blackgenocide.org. So thank you for your time right now. God bless you, and may you survive and prosper. My black friends, one last thing I need to say is an addendum. There are many different things I could say regarding this topic in only a short amount of time that I have, but your greatest enemy right now is the #1 graduate of the Negro Project is Barack Hussein Obama, our president, who is totally supportive in every possible way of the entire social Darwinist Planned Parenthood agenda. So when you look to him as an inspiration, unfortunately he has been bought and paid for, and that's how he got into office. The very people who started this whole thing, the prodigy of Margaret Sanger, the continuance of the eugenics movement and race science, those are the people who now continue and put Barack Obama in office. But this poison which is attacking you is spreading not only from a great betrayer like President Obama and down through the Congress, but it goes down to your local level. And let's be specific, as two main examples of a poison: Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson. These two individuals who portray themselves as ministers are anything but. And in two classic examples, they're totally supportive of Planned Parenthood in every manifestation. They support abortion totally by their own words. And also they support the devastation of the black community by the attack of homosexuality upon it. And so this is, we're speaking of a broad attack by these two individuals who represent themselves as defenders of the black community. Actually, you're getting a knife in the back from both of them. How do you think they got their money? How do you think they survive and they're so prosperous economically? Because they're lackeys. Because the powers that be, the plantation masters, know that these are house Negroes with capital letters, who they can rely on to backstab you and keep you enslaved by acting as your friend, as your defender, as always there to help you when they're anything but. They'll go there for the cameras before they'll go for you. Again, you are not the person that they're supporting. Just as in the anti-police arguments, the Black Lives Matter, that is not a pro-black movement. It is an anti-police movement, a completely different base. They act like they're your friends, but they're only there, like so many others, to use you and then throw you away, as with the mother who was killed in Oakland and the other people shot in Oakland who they don't give a damn about. And so when you look at Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson, as with so many others, they are your betrayers. They are not your friends in any slightest sense. They get paid, they prosper because they sell you out. And the moment they stop selling you out and tell you the way things really are is the moment they will get pushed, the ejection button will blow them out of wherever they are, and you won't hear them again. So please, my friends, you not only have the difficulties that you have in surviving in our modern life, but you especially have difficulties by people who come up to you and say, hey, we're your friends, we're your great defenders. They're actually there to get close enough to put a knife in your back. And so that is one of the great tragedies for the black community, is that you're being betrayed by your own people, Uncle Toms and Aunt Toms again. Show me Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton. They are Uncle Toms par excellence. They are numero uno Uncle Toms. They will betray you every single time. And so I put this out for your consideration, and if you see it, that's great. I hope you do, that it's part of the great survival difficulty that you'll have, that you have to deal with these enemies who are more than of yourselves, who are more than willing to betray you for their own profit. So my black friends, may God bless you. May you survive all these things. May you survive the racism of our nation, which is, again, this institutionalized. It is deep as you can possibly imagine, and they're far more powerful than you could ever dream of, because the government is actually funding this racism, which you know is one manifestation, international family planning. Why do you think they're doing that? Because they have to take these same ideas to control your population and kill you, not only in America, but around the world. And the government, the people who control the government, who have taken our government over, who have eliminated our founding republic, which was based on Christian values, have now replaced that with humanist values, atheist values, which agree with Charles Darwin, the idea of race science and eugenics, who say that you are inferior and they're going to keep you down. And my friends, you'll never survive, you'll never prosper as a community until you can get rid of this poison which is attacking you every day, which has become so institutionalized that it's literally in your phone book. And that literally politicians, the Democratic Party, is totally in support of Planned Parenthood. And but at the same time, they will double cross you and say that they're your friends. See where their allegiance really lies. Will they ever reject Planned Parenthood and Margaret Sanger? No, no way. There's actually awards given out in Margaret Sanger's name. Even when she was she bled racism. So she was the greatest racist in the history of our nation, certainly in the top 3. And again, Planned Parenthood has killed more of you than the Klan could ever possibly imagine in their wildest dreams to kill. Planned Parenthood has done that, and they're doing it every day. They're doing it as I stand here now. So my friends, I've just outlined the battle to you. Don't be fooled. You're being betrayed by all these people, and so the battle that you thought against racism is far, far bigger than what you've imagined. But it can be won, but in order to do that, you must literally save your soul. Don't lose your Christian values. Don't lose the value of human life, which abortion and so-called pro-choice wants to crush out of you. It wants to crush in your soul. And don't lose the value of your humanity and be poisoned by the poison of homosexuality, which these plantation masters also want to destroy your community with. They want to destroy your community, they want to destroy your family structure. That is why there's so many, the family in the black community has been documented to have been destroyed. That's why there's so many young men without parents, or without a two-parent family, and they aren't satisfied with that. They want more destruction. And this is not an accident. This is a purposeful design to crush you, to socially engineer you to be slaves even when you're walking around without chains. You will have your chains in your mind, so please break those chains. Don't lose your Christian values, which are the only way to break those chains. May God bless you in all that you do. Thank you.